In the news conference call just yesterday, Samford came out in defense of himself in reference to what he called insinuations that he was not in support of Folsom's proposed policy banning PSC employees from accepting gratuities or meals from the companies they regulate. Last week, in a broadcast story on this station, Folsom pointed out that Samford was the only commissioner that hadn't signed the policy. But today, Samford says that was because he was out of town, and when he returned, someone had stolen or taken the report from his desk.
It should be noted that I had initially proposed a statement of policy be drafted at the commission meeting on Friday, May 23rd. The reason I did not immediately sign the proposed draft is that I was, at that time, conferring with Montgomery County District Attorney about the prospects of a Public Service Commission regulation as opposed to a mere policy.
Samford says his code of ethics will be proposed within the next 2 months. On the second issue, Samford says Jim Folsom is the only commissioner not trying to fully comply with an attempt to reduce the number of state cars used by the department. Samford says Folsom's executive assistant, Delmer Du Bois, hasn't turned in his car, setting a bad image for Alabama consumers to notice. With Folsom on vacation, Du Bois defended himself and Folsom. Du Bois says Folsom's office has started a public relations effort known as PSC Outreach.
In using this automobile, we do visit utility companies that we regulate to get a first-hand report for Commissioner Folsom as to what's going on.
But both Samford and Commissioner Pete Matthews didn't go along with Folsom on the outreach program. Issue number 3, the release of information related to the utilities regulated by the PSC. Samford was making reference to Commissioner Folsom's assistance in obtaining information for TV12's investigative reporter Norman Lumpkin, saying it was a violation of the law because 2 commissioners didn't okay the release.
I have no jurisdiction over Commissioner Folsom and what he does with the files. However, I will see that our staff is protected from this statute.
Du Bois, again defending Folsom, says Folsom met with the 2 commissioners on this very matter just before the incident in question.
It was Commissioner Folsom's understanding that Commissioner Samford and Commissioner Matthews would not sign any release of audits, but Commissioner Folsom could do as he wished.
Issue number 4, Samford announced temporary appointments to several PSC division heads. Du Bois says Folsom doesn't know about these appointments. Immediately after Samford's news conference, he called a brief meeting of the entire PSC staff. He told them that without the permission of the commission, no information protected by the code would be released. As to why there is infighting between Samford and Folsom's office, some sources say it's political aspirations, others say it's a difference on how to handle the PSC, and even others say they don't know. It has all come as a total surprise. At the PSC, Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
While no one is ready just yet to tag Steve Balboni as the next Lou Gehrig or even the next Moose Skowron, he is beginning to cause a stir in the Yankee organization. Even the grizzled New York media is starting to watch his progress. And why not? He's hit 22 home runs for Nashville with 57 RBIs, both tops in the league. He also leads the league in runs scored, and he's sporting a .347 average. That's one of the best in the league. And remember, we're not even halfway in the Southern League as yet. His manager, Stump Merrill, is obviously impressed.
His accomplishments to date, yes, may have surprised us somewhat. I think we all realize that he had the kind of potential that he is showing to date. I don't think that anybody visualized that he would get off to this kind of a start this early in the season, but I don't think there's any question in anybody's mind that they know it's just a matter of consistency with him, and if he can remain consistent, then he is going to have an outstanding year. There's no question that he's done a great job to date, and he's well on his way to going up the ladder rather rapidly, we believe.
How is he as an all-around baseball player, running, throwing, the whole bit?
Well, I'll tell you, he's a manager's dream, to be honest with you. If you had 21 like him, you wouldn't have a problem from day one until the end of the year. He's a big, strong kid that everybody knows can hit the ball out of the ballpark, but the thing that I like about him is that he goes about the game the way it should be. He plays defense when we're on defense, and he plays offense when we're on offense, and he doesn't let one phase of the game affect the other.
A lot of Major League superstars would be envious of your numbers. Is this surprising to you this year?
Well, my home runs are a surprise, and my average is a big surprise. Actually, I expected to hit home runs and RBIs, but I'm really at a higher pace than I really thought I'd be. You know, I'm surprising that I am hitting the home runs that I have been.
If you can keep this up, you'll be in the bigs before long. Obviously, that's your goal. How soon do you think you can make it?
Well, I really don't know. It's like mostly up to the Yankees. You know, it's their decision how how fast they bring me up. All I can do is just continue, to play the best I can, and just, hopefully I'll get a break and, move up.
When you were a kid, did you have any fantasies of being a Yankee, wearing the pinstripes?
Well, I'm from New Hampshire, so I was a Boston Red Sox fan. But now I'm a Yankee fan, and now I'd like to play with the Yankees.
He has to get down to the media waivers. And she said, when you come to look over our premises, the man was the first Attorney General, Secretary of a Jewish man was the first Attorney General, Secretary of don't you? Even without all, despite all this mess here. And the magnolias look so pretty on this. That was a great item.
We just had some good news from Ohio, which is the first state that's going to come in. All three networks say we're going to win Ohio.
That's great.
So, as you know, we only elected about 15 delegates from going over the top. And if all the states had done like Alabama, I would have been resting the last couple of months instead of sweating out these last few votes.
Well, we were hoping that this gathering tonight would be a celebration for you to have the remaining delegates necessary.
Well, it is a celebration for me, and tonight's going over the top is a good time for me to call, Mr. Speaker, and thank my friends.
Well, we have gone over the top with this group.
Mayor Emery Fulmer admits he's concerned with the sharp rise in crimes committed within the city. He cited some alarming figures from last week's criminal activities. There was a murder, a robbery, 1 recorded rape, and 10 recorded cases of assault. Fulmer says there's just no explanation for the sudden increase in assaults. In other business, a resolution authorizing Fulmer to contract a local auto towing service was tabled 1 week so the owner could appear before the council. Fulmer told council members the city is currently working under an expired contract and immediate action is needed. The council also voted to hold a public hearing to assess the progress and performance of the Montgomery Community Development Program. That hearing is set for June 17th. Sydney Kohara, WSFA TV News from City Hall.
Front park, and we had our beautiful function down there, and the gentleman from 5 had the good sense not to come out in the sun that afternoon.
Governor Wallace, I hadn't talked to you in a spell. How you getting along? How do you feel?
Bob, I'm doing fine. Get along fine.
You look well. You look like you feel good.
I don't know how I look, but I feel all right.
Well, you still have some. You're still having some discomfort, though. I know you told me this.
I have a little, but I've learned to live with it.
Well, it's good to see you, and I appreciate you being on our one-on-one segment tonight.
I'm glad to be on it.
Can't help but think back to 1964, Governor. You and I were in Madison, Wisconsin, on a cold afternoon, and you decided that day to run for President of the United States, and you ran in 64, 68, 72, 76. You've had to have some memories this year not being in the presidential race.
Well, we didn't really run in 64. We ran in 3 primaries,
yes,
not for the nomination, and got a surprising number of votes. But the only time I really ran for president was in 68.
Yes, sir.
Although the best opportunity I had was in 72, when I was the leading candidate in popular and delegate votes when I was shot in Maryland. But not being in the campaign does not worry me. In fact, everything has to come to an end, you know. And so the man who shot me in Maryland shot me out of presidential politics.
So you really haven't missed it as much as you might have. Is that what you're saying?
No, I haven't missed it at all. In other words, everything comes to, if I were younger, and in good shape. And this was back several years ago. I might try it.
Might still be
I
in there.
think, frankly, that if I hadn't been shot in '72, it'd be a good possibility I'd be one of those in the would have been in one of the runnings, because I think the ticket would have been Humphrey Wallace in 1972.
Yes, sir. Well, I'm sure you've maintained a great interest in the campaign since you've been
Yes,
there.
I kept up with the campaign pretty good.
Well, a whole lot of interest, of course, in what you did in 1968 as a third-party candidate. It's coming back to light now today because of the candidacy of John Anderson. Do you see any similarities there?
Well, we were different in our approaches to, as far as the issues are concerned, we were very different. He's an ultra-liberal.
Yes, sir.
But I know that our involvement in 1968 has made it easier for him to get on the ballot in many states, because we had a case before the Supreme Court on the Ohio statute that tried to prevent third parties, and we won the case, and the court knocked the law out and said you couldn't have one that was so prohibitive in getting on, or so tough in getting on, would be unconstitutional.
Yes, sir.
So he does have a better chance of making more ballot positions than he would have had I not gone in 1968 and won that decision before the Supreme Court.
You've got 46 electoral votes that year.
I got 46 electoral votes.
Almost 10 million popular votes.
That's right, 10 million popular votes.
Most impressive third-party showing, I guess, since the Bull Moose Party way back in 1912 or something like that.
Well, I believe that percentage-wise, Mr. Roosevelt got more votes, but I don't believe he got many electoral
Yes,
votes.
I believe you're right.
And, of course, I think that the percentage he got in numbers is not as many as I got in 1968.
Do you think John Anderson will do as well as you did in 19...
Well, I have no way of knowing. There's no way to second-guess the American public. We're living in troubled times, economically and otherwise, and as a result, it's hard to make any forecast or prediction. I don't think you can read the American people's mind or second-guess them at all on a presidential election.
Have you made up your mind yet who you might support for president?
Well, I probably have, but I'm not going to...
You're not going to tell me tonight.
I wish I could be voting for myself.
I suspect there are a few people out there who would like to do that too, Governor. You must feel vindicated to a degree, because much what you talked about, and I was with you a good part of this time in past years, and much of what you warned about might happen to this country has unfolded in the past 10
It has
12 years.
unfolded as I predicted in 1968, and every part of my platform in '68 is now the platform of Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan. The only two who don't have all the parts of the platform, it happens to be Mr. Anderson, who's an ultra-liberal. But the campaign of 1968 today is being run by people in the Democrat and Republican Party on the same platform I ran on in 1968.
Governor, I'm going to ask you one final question. It's the one that so many people want me to ask. Some of us have grown up and grown old with you and seen your name on the ballot so many times in so many different races. Will we ever see the name of George Wallace on a...
I have no intentions to ever be a candidate again, but I wouldn't say never to anything, but I certainly have no plans to be involved in politics again.
Governor, I thank you so much for being our guest tonight.
Thank you, Bob.
One is former Governor George Wallace's press secretary, Billy Joe Camp. Sources close to Camp indicate that he will run for the job, and Camp himself doesn't deny the speculation. He spent a number of years with the Wallace administration, including the years during which Wallace was very active in the PSC rate increase request by Alabama Power Company. For the past year, Camp has been the executive director of the Alabama Trial Lawyers Association. The other possible candidate is the current president of the PSC, Jimmy Samford.
The option is open. However, I would quickly add that I am still negative on the idea of running for this job.
Why would Samford not want the job?
I don't feel that I'm comfortable in the political arena.
As for why he would run for the post, Sanford says it's because he has certain goals he'd like to meet before leaving office, goals including a restructuring of the PSC staff.
We're going to work overtime to see that they are.
If they're not?
There's a possibility.
While Sanford is figuring out whether or not he'll accomplish his goals by the end of this term, his time for making that decision is slowly running out. The deadline for qualifying is July 3rd. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
Montgomery Airport Authority board members met with Eastern officials in Miami, but what was described as an emergency in San Francisco kept key airline officials away from the meeting. The two sides are trying to resolve the question of just how long the airline will have to pay its lease for terminal and baggage space at Danley. Eastern says its lease is up when the Civil Aeronautics Board gives them permission to stop service in Montgomery. The airport authority says that's not true. They say Eastern is obligated to a lease that runs through 1993, and that's where the question stands after the Miami meeting. Airport Authority Chairman Don Reynolds says one positive point that came out of the meeting is that both sides are now working to get Ocean Airways operational by June 15th. He says the lawsuit against Eastern is scheduled for June 20th, but says he's optimistic that the issue will be solved by then. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
Rain literally cleanses the air. As they fall, raindrops absorb microscopic bits of dust, soot, and sea spray, making hazy skies clear again. Now that the air is also carrying pollutants, rains bring them down as well, and the result is a rain of acid. I asked research scientist Paul Sperry of the National Center for Atmospheric Research about the strength of acid rain and the problems it poses.
The acidity is minor from the standpoint of a strong acid. It will never be, or has not to date, been any more acidic than vinegar, let's say, or lemon juice. But over a long period of time, that is going to affect crops. It'll affect soil depletion of nutrients. It will affect structures as far as corrosion and wear.
A graphic illustration of what acid rain can do, says Sperry, is in upstate New York, where many previously well-fished lakes are becoming devoid of fish. He adds that acid rain follows the growth of population and industrial centers.
All sections of the country are being affected to some degree. The Northeast has gone through its greatest growth in the acidity, and the Southeast probably will be the next area to experience the increasing acidity.
I'm Dan Atkinson with Weatherbeat.
The LEPA is the state arm of the Federal Law Enforcement Assistance Administration. Its purpose is to channel federal money to courts and crime-fighting units throughout Alabama. The current staff of the agency numbers 48, but as a result of a layoff, 21 of those employees will be left jobless.
We were forced to do this for financial reasons because federal funds are been cut back. We're running short of funds to make it to the end of the year. Plus an anticipated drastic cut, if not elimination, beginning October 1.
Davis says cutbacks are being made now in an effort to avoid a shutdown of the entire operation by the end of July. Those employees being laid off include secretaries, clerks, and senior staff personnel. President Carter has called for the abolishment of the nationwide program as part of his budget cut for 1981. Davies says he finds it extremely unusual for the president to take such a stand when crime is on the upswing. Congress is expected to make a decision on the funding of the program within 2 weeks. The LEPA was begun in 1968, and since that time has awarded $113 million in federal grants to Alabama law enforcement agencies, courts, and juvenile justice programs. Davis says, as a result of funding cuts and layoffs, law enforcement in Alabama will be greatly affected. Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
Both players work in Montgomery during the off-season. Braggs, a former Culver Wolverine, is a production technician at a local television station. And Washington, who played at Robert E. Lee, now teaches school. But keeping in shape is a big part of their daily summer routines.
Byron?
Yeah.
What you doing all this for, 8 o'clock in the morning? They got you on a workout?
Yeah.
What kind of schedule you on?
I'm working out 3 days a week with weights and running every other day.
When do you have to report practice?
Right now I'm not sure, but we start August the 16th, so we probably, most of us, older guys, we probably come in early.
How many chances y'all got to come back next year?
We have a pretty good chance. The defense is pretty well set, pretty strong over there. What we need to do now is get some experience among the offensive line, you know, so they can get some oneness. And once they develop that, I guess, yeah, I think everything will be back to normal.
Mike, what about you? You're making all the big money now. What you doing here at 8 o'clock in the morning working out?
Well, you can say I'm making the big money. You know, that's what people say, but, you know, a defensive back don't make that much money in this NFL, I tell you, unless you're a superstar, in which I'm not right now, but I hope to be someday.
You got some Alabama and Auburn players on the Tampa Bay squad. You ever get a chance to see those guys during the summer?
Oh, yeah. You know, Charlie Hanna's down there and Johnny Davis. You know, Johnny is from Montgomery, so I get a chance to see Johnny all the time. And, well, the only time I see Charlie is when we're there in camp. His locker is right in front of mine. You know, as far as Auburn, we have Neil Donahue, and his locker is right next to mine, so we're pretty good friends now, and I get to see him pretty well much. Mm-hmm.
The Bucks had a super year this year, and it surprised a lot of people. Were you at all surprised by it?
No, I wasn't that surprised. You know, a lot of people didn't get to see us play, you know. They only got the final score, and they really didn't see how tight the games was, and the games could have gone, you know, either way. And just picking up the paper saying, oh, Tampa Bay lost again. But, you know, we got a young team, and I knew with the getting a few more players, like 2 or 3 players, like the addition of Doug Weedman at quarterback and things like that, it was going to help us. And all the guys that say the average age is 26, we're going to be coming.
When do you have to report to camp now?
Well, the veterans have to be in on July the 27th.
With Doug Williams at quarterback and an average team age of only 26, Washington looks for Tampa Bay to win their division again next year. Dave Cody, WSFA TV Sports.
The city of Montgomery bought Union Station from the L&N Railroad almost 10 years ago. Just last year, the city agreed to donate the building to General Services Administration for renovation and use as office space. Now, the fate of Montgomery's Union Station depends on the outcome of a small but very important evaluation report. Information for the Historic Structures Report was compiled by several GSA officials who examined the building earlier this week. According to Reese McKinney of the mayor's office, the GSA examiners were very optimistic about their findings, but he says they wouldn't commit themselves to a definite answer. McKinney did say the agency has already put a dollar figure on the cost of restoring the historic landmark, but again, no details have been given to the mayor's office. The GSA team will present their findings in a combined report to Congress later this month. Only then, McKinney says, will there be any indication of GSA's final decision to restore or not to restore Montgomery's Union Station. Sydney Kohara, WSFA TV News.
This is, of course, a shock to us. It's, as you say, I predicted as early as December. But what's even more devastating to the school system will be that next year's budget, which goes into effect in October, that budget is based on this year's growth being 12%, and next year being 9.44%. So my prediction now is next year's budget is going to be several times in proration worse than this year's.
The record subpoenaed involves city expenditures from 1970 to 1976. City Clerk Stephen Stark won't say who might be involved, only that he had to turn over a large number of invoices. Other former and present city officials say they don't know why the FBI is investigating. An FBI spokesman says the probe involves former officials, probably not present ones. Former Mayor Hugh Thompson wasn't home. His wife says they've discussed the investigation but haven't lost any sleep over it. She says her husband wouldn't knowingly do anything wrong or anything that would hurt the city. Former City Clerk Bud Porch also says he didn't do anything wrong that he knows of. The present city clerk isn't talking.
It would be inappropriate for me to comment beyond what I've already stated to the council, that the court requested certain expenditure records, which are invoices, and those I have turned over to the court.
Stark says he has made some changes since he became city clerk in 1977, including changes in the city's system for paying bills. He says the new methods don't necessarily correct crooked practices, but only make them more responsible. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News, Alexander City.
There's something about summertime that just draws kids to water. But as they start out swimming, there's some precautions we need to remember.
We visited the Southeast YMCA here in Montgomery, one of the largest and most popular swimming areas in the city. We found dozens of kids enjoying themselves, many of them wanted to be on television. But our concern was with safety and the important things kids and parents need to know about swimming.
One thing that we strive is no running on the pool deck. The children must be able to swim the length of the pool before they are able to swim without the accompaniment of their parents. We have swim tests every day around 3 o'clock, and if they cannot swim the length of the pool, they must leave unless they're with their parents. And we are very strict on that rule because there's no way a child can stay here without being able to swim.
You have so many kids. How do you keep an eye on them?
We have a very good staff of lifeguards. We have 7 full-time lifeguards, and we have at least 4 on duty at all time, during this peak time of day especially. Now we have 5 out here today just because there is a large crowd.
Kids need to know when they're diving that the water is deep enough, and like there's nothing under there that they could hit, and the condition of the diving board, if it's slick when it gets wet, or if the bolts on it are loose, and there's a possibility of it breaking, general things like that.
What about diving in lake areas?
Okay, lake areas, when they're diving in lake areas, they ought to be diving in a designated area for diving. So it ought to be cleared out, and there's nothing they could hit, and that it is deep enough.
They need to know how to swim. Children should not even go near a swimming pool without being able to swim, or even near water. They definitely need to learn how to swim.
The precautions are simple enough. Know how to swim, obey the rules at a swimming pool, and never swim alone. This is Coping, and I'm Ivy Berman.
With his wife and children at his side, Camp told reporters that one of the reasons he decided to enter the race for PSC president is because, quote, there is no other commission or office which more directly touches the lives of Alabamians. Camp added that he has 3 goals he will seek to accomplish if elected.
I intend to conduct the business of the Public Service Commission in such a way as to regain the faith and confidence of the people in their Public Service Commission. Second, I will do whatever is necessary to gain the resources needed for the Commission to accomplish its job and to give the people the type of service that they deserve. Third, I will ensure work to ensure that Alabama receives reliable utility service to the people of our state at the lowest possible price.
Camp is the third candidate to officially announce for PSC president. He campaigned briefly for a PSC post in 1978, but withdrew to take a job as public relations officer for the state Medicaid system. Asked if he is seeking support from former Governor Wallace, he said he hopes Wallace will vote for him, but he did not say whether or not he expects Wallace to support his campaign. Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
An adjunct to the legislature.
The other one seems to be misplaced. We want to make sure that this is signed and it's policy of the commission. So we ask the attorney standing for it to redraw it. We have signed it and are handing it to you or Mr. Sanford. Thank you.
As Public Service Commission President, what advice would you have for Davy as Girl State PSC President?
Well,
okay, is this proposal being passed around to some of the commissioners now?
I feel that the huge utilities have whined and dined enough, and it's time that the citizens took a hold of it and sort of just spoke out and told them that they were tired of them using the money, that they didn't have the money to go and spend it on all this, and so they didn't think it was fair.
What do you hope to learn? What do you think would be the most important thing for you to learn as the Girl State PSC President?
All the duties and how to handle the situation.
He heard Stacey interviewed on TED that what she looks forward to more than anything else is getting to know more than one of the people who are here in Alabama. My only regret in terms of direct contact with the elected officials in the state of Alabama. I'm certainly grateful for his work in the Lieutenant Governor's office, and I congratulate his work in such a way that every citizen in the state of Alabama can have an expectation that on any bill that will affect them, that particular bill.
that looks pretty good.
Foy says for every person out of work, 1.7 more jobs are lost because of a ripple effect. He says 2,000 Alabamians are out of work now, and 3,000 more will lose their jobs by June 28th. As a result of those layoffs, Foy says another 7,000 Alabamians will be out of work shortly thereafter. In addition, the governor's executive secretary says farmers will suffer more from inflation than other workers. He says their productivity is up, but their profits are down. Reuben Finney, director of the Alabama Development Office, is more optimistic. He thinks Alabama will weather the recession better than many states because of its diversity of industry, geographical location, and high labor productivity. Mayor Emory Farmer also spoke at the forum. He says it's frightening that people are assaulting the free enterprise system, but he says the entire country depends on successful businesses. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
Just a little more than a year ago, Donna V. Lindsay had no place in Montgomery to display her talent. She met other aspiring but unknown local artists who were also in the same dilemma. So they put their creative heads together, bound and determined to produce some results. And sure enough, they did. In June of 1979, Sykes Gallery was born.
The Society of Arts and Crafts, which had been established in about 1974, roughly, but got a constitution in 1976, had been aiming at a gallery for some time, and in 78 we started trying to solicit money to build the gallery, to get money enough so that we could start the gallery. We in '79 we did manage to collect, I believe it was $1,000, which was enough to pay our first 2 months' rent.
The Arts and Crafts Gallery is located at 1915 Walnut Street, just off Carter Hill Road in Montgomery. Inside, you'll find many beautiful and unique items. Of course, wonderful paintings by local Montgomery artists are also included.
We have the porcelain dolls and rag dolls, and of course in the paintings we have watercolors and oils, and we have batiks also, and then we also have a lot of things for babies.
Sachs Gallery is gearing up for a very special weekend. Their first anniversary celebration begins June 13th, and it's an event no one should miss.
We're going to have 3 days of demonstrations by our artists and craftsmen. We have a different one every hour on the hour. We have starting at 10 o'clock on Friday the 13th, lucky Friday the 13th. We will also have a sale going on at the same time. We're going to have a red tag sale.
Sachs Gallery was designed to promote the talents of all artists and handicraft people in the Montgomery area. And if you're the enthusiastic type, Sachs Gallery is offering special classes for the person who wants to do more than just look.
We have classes all year, but during the summer we're going to be very strong on children's classes. We're going to have a class for the 4 up will be Art and Craft by Margaret Payne on Wednesday afternoons, and on the same Wednesday afternoon we're going to have acrylics for ages 9 up, and on Thursday afternoons we're going to have watercolors for ages 6 up, and we're going to start a new class for high school students who are serious about art. We do have adult classes. We have figure drawing class on Sunday afternoon, and watercolor class on Monday afternoon, and oil painting on Wednesday morning.
Next week's show should prove to art lovers everywhere that the capital city has quality talent that will always command the limelight. Sydney Kohara reporting for Alabama Illustrated.
The success of teenage stars on the professional tennis circuit has renewed interest in junior tennis. It may seem a bit remote, but the next Tracy Austin or Pam Shriver could be among a group of youngsters enrolled in a special program of instruction at the O'Connor Tennis Center here in Montgomery. O'Connor pro Charlie Lane oversees the lessons.
Well, we call this our junior development, and we've got juniors from age 9 up to 18 years of age, and we're trying to get them started to build a large program, get them started in the junior program around the state as far as inter-city play, sanctioned tournaments, maybe a southern or national ranking.
Who are the kids now? These all Montgomery kids participating?
All the Montgomery kids. We had a program last year, it was our first program, and it went over real well. We made a few mistakes, and we're still learning. But this year the kids are much more enthusiastic, and we've got a great staff of kids, college kids working with them. Everything's looking up.
How long will this run now?
It's a year-round program with the exception of the winter months. Anybody who wants to register can still do so for the month of June. Then we have a re-registration in July and August and September.
Lane says the junior development program has resulted in the statewide ranking of more Montgomery junior players this year than ever before, but that it's difficult to produce first-class players in only 2 years. Lane, though, is confident that Montgomery will make its mark in junior tennis. Dave Cody, WSFA TV Sports.
The youth seminar attracted about 100 students. It's sponsored by the American Citizenship Center of Alabama Christian College and is designed to help those attending achieve a better understanding of American heritage. Alabama Christian's president, Dr. E.R. Brannon, was a keynote speaker during the first day's session. He told the students they're the new recruits of America, and he encouraged them to become informed and inspired to uphold the nation's great traditions. Getting acquainted was one segment of the seminar enjoyed by the participants. Activity officials stressed the importance of getting to know one another, saying friendship is one of the most important foundations of true citizenship. The seminar continues through Saturday afternoon. Sydney Kohara, WSFA TV News.
Delta's manager of public affairs, Wayne Schweitzer, says the airline will provide 49 additional seats on each flight out of Montgomery. He says the airline is replacing the present DC-9 aircraft with Boeing 727s. The expansion comes on the heels of Eastern Airlines' decision to stop service in Montgomery. But Schweitzer says Delta's decision to expand was made long before Eastern's announcement. This morning, Schweitzer also announced that the airline is filing a petition with the Civil Aeronautics Board, protesting a recent order prohibiting Eastern Airlines from leaving Montgomery on June 1st. Schweitzer says the airline gave the board ample notice of its intent to leave, but the board ruled that Eastern must continue service through June 30th. Schweitzer says in that same order, more restrictions were placed on the airline serving Montgomery, such as filing weekly reports and notifying the board before changing schedules. He says these restrictions are inconsistent with the 1978 Airline Deregulation Act passed by Congress. Schweitzer says that act was passed to reduce restrictions placed on the airlines. He says the board's ruling is a precedent-setting case which needs to be corrected before other U.S. airlines are affected. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
We're in a heap of trouble. At the present time, that's the way it looks like it. I'd have to summarize it.
The state's heap of trouble stems from a combination of problems. In May, the state's income from the gasoline tax was down 5.7%. Income tax was up 4%, but sales tax revenue was down 6.7%, and utility tax income dropped 16.3%, which means the state's overall tax income in May decreased almost 2%.
The trend in May continues. We are unquestionably in proration in the Special Education Trust Fund, and not too far from it in the General Fund. But then for next year, we're running into real problems.
Foy says Alabama can expect to lose $27 million in federal revenue sharing funds next year. On top of that, he says the legislature over-appropriated for next year, and the tax structure just can't support the budget. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
Which will be an organization that will represent support personnel, school bus drivers, secretaries, food service personnel, mechanics in the state of Alabama, that will give them a clear voice and that they will run and that they will have full voting rights in and will represent them. We believe that the support personnel in this state need to have such a voice, and we intend to provide it with the Alabama Association of Classified School Employees.
Mr. Peacock's pretty excited about the new kids in town, but Mr. Ostrich isn't so sure he wants to worry with those two new females, especially when they're going to grow up to be larger than any Pittsburgh Steeler lineman. Two female brown bear cubs, the latest additions to the Montgomery Zoo family, have zoo officials and visitors smiling. After 4 years of fundraising projects, enough money was raised to bring the bears and a new bear house to the zoo. Only the cubs' new home is only half complete. Its dedication will hopefully come by the end of this summer. And now for the bear facts. The cubs were born 6 months ago in Knoxville, Tennessee. They weigh just over 20 pounds right now, but their claws are already plenty sharp, and their climbing is pretty well developed, too. A young male cub will join the two girls sometime next month. I haven't mentioned their names yet, and for good reason. The two cubs don't have names. Zoo officials are hopeful someone out there can come up with the right names for two lively bear cubs. Sydney Kohara, WSFA TV News.
Meaning is profession. It doesn't connote service to a higher cause. See that circumstance already here. Society as a whole, past and present. past and present.
Diploma on behalf of the class.
The agenda of the hearing was centered around program plans for federal fiscal years 1981 and 1982, as well as an accountability report for fiscal year 1979. As a result of the hearing, appropriate funds are channeled to 126 local VOTEC school systems, as well as technical and junior colleges. One of the main subjects on the agenda was the discussion of revised formulas for distribution of federal funds.
The reason for this is because our formula has not been in compliance with current regulations, which place emphasis on depressed areas, low-income, poverty areas of the state, so that the shift in funds would be to those areas to provide more dollars for vocational training. This means that those counties that have high unemployment, low per capita income would receive a greater share of the federal dollars in both the secondary and the post-secondary institutions.
Carter says currently there are 250,000 Alabamians enrolled in vocational programs, and he says more and more people are becoming interested. He says in the past 5 years, enrollment has increased by 50,000. Carter adds that the current vocational educational budget, which consists of federal, state, and local funds, totals $120 million. Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
At 3:00 p.m., he was picked up on Monroe Street at a local tavern there. He was brought to headquarters, questioned, gave us a confession, and he was also identified by people on the scene in a lineup. Since that time, with the cooperation of the district attorney's office, he has been formally charged with assault with intent to rape in the first degree, assault with the first degree, and $15,000 bond in each case.
Let's get ready. You ready? Jack, get the other end there right there. Let's see. All right. Got it done. Thank you, Jim, for those very generous remarks.
Mr. President, it's my pleasure to present these candidates from the School of Pharmacy.
Mitchell McIver Benton, David Maxwell Boozer Jr., Kristen Ann Conrad, Robert Kersey Gilmore, Mary Jane Powers with honor, Morris Edwin Ray Jr.,
The gold coffee pot will be on display at the Montgomery Museum of Fine Arts. Prince Khalid says he's presenting it to the city in appreciation of the kindness he's received here. In accepting the coffee pot, Mayor Emery Falmer says he appreciates how the prince has tried to bridge the gap of understanding and friendship between Saudi Arabia and the United States. The prince has been in Montgomery since August, attending Auburn University at Montgomery and the Air War College at Maxwell. He's just completed coursework at both institutions and will be returning to his country. Prince Khalid says after spending 2 months in Saudi Arabia, he'll come back to the United States, this time to attend a course in Naval International Defense Management in California. During his stay in California, the prince says he'll make several trips to Montgomery. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
Commissioners Jimmy Samford and Pete Matthews listened intently as PSC staffers questioned Goshen representatives about services and past performance. The small Pike County Telephone Company says it needs the rate increase to keep up with inflation. Tom Norris, auditor for Goshen Telephone, says the company has lost $80,000 and the utility doesn't want any more loss years. The proposed rate hike would increase residential phone rates $1.50, while the rates for business service would increase $2.50. A decision on Goshen's proposed rate hike could be decided as early as next month at the PSC's regular monthly meeting July 7th. Sydney Kohara, WSFA TV News.
It hasn't been that long ago since a gallon of gasoline cost 30 or 40 cents a gallon. But in the past couple of years, a lot has happened to affect gasoline prices. Prices have jumped so drastically that many gasoline pumps aren't equipped to register the full price per gallon. The result has been confusion for many motorists. Some gasoline stations post the price per half gallon, which means you must multiply the dollar amount on the pump by 2. But then there are the stations that are utilizing the metric system and are posting their gasoline prices per liter, which is confusing, especially if you don't know how many liters there are in a gallon. We decided to ask some motorists how they feel about the liter system.
I say it was really an inconvenience. I really don't see why we should change over to liters, because the other countries are having it.
It's kind of hard to determine how much you're getting for your money. You're not quite used to the liter system, so you're kind of hard to relate the gallons to the dollar part of it.
It's kind of confusing, because you expect to see the gallons up there. You think that you got more gas than you really have.
Now that gasoline prices are well above $1 a gallon, many of the major oil companies are updating their pumps. But most are simply posting their gasoline prices per liter, which is a lot less expensive. An average liter of gasoline costs as much as a full gallon used to. And for those of you who are not familiar with the metric system, it takes 3.7 liters to equal a gallon. If you've not yet driven into a gasoline station that is using the metric system, you will sooner or later, because more and more stations are preparing for the liter system and its use in the future. Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
All we know at this point is we had a black male by the name of Edward C. Davis, approximately 29 years old, who lived at this 1415 Carey Street, was supposedly with 2 other subjects when a shooting broke out, and this subject was shot at this time 1 time in the head. He was announced dead here at the scene and has been carried to the morgue. At this time we have several witnesses who have given us some names to go on, but we don't have any suspects in custody.
About what time did the shooting take place?
At approximately 4:25 this afternoon.
Clarence David Cobb, Bachelor of Science.
Cynthia Sims Stern, Bachelor of Arts, Speech.
In 1856, and awarded its first degrees in 1860. But it was not until 1968
up here and get the score from y'all.
The main purpose of the organization is to provide interpreter services for the deaf. The group's president, Connie Barnes, says there are times when a deaf person may need an interpreter to translate sign language to those who don't understand it. This weekend, the group will evaluate and screen those interested in becoming interpreters.
Well, we're having a workshop, and we're trying to strengthen our state organization. But also, we're going to be screening some of the people in the Montgomery area to give them a level at which they are able to interpret, so that the people in this area who need interpreter services will know the kind of service to expect from these people.
Mrs. Barnes says the group will also discuss more effective methods of communication and ways the deaf can break the sound barrier. She says quite a few television programs have tried to do this by using closed caption, a written explanation at the bottom of your television screen, or a sign language. The service is being offered on local as well as national programs. Mrs. Barnes says she's optimistic that in the near future, more programs will begin to offer the service. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
At 15 miles in Carey Street, was supposedly with two other subjects when a shooting broke out, and this subject was shot at this time one time in the head. He was announced dead here at the scene and has been carried to the morgue. At this time we have several witnesses who have given us some names to go on, but we don't have any suspects in custody.
About what time did the shooting take place?
At approximately 4:25 this afternoon.